Plaintiff David Gagnon is suing his former friend for the value of a motorcycle and emotional distress. David says the defendant is a heavy drinker who got drunk and totaled his motorcycle. Defendant Brian Hughes admits to being a drinker and a crack user, but he says David's the one who sold him the drugs.
David Gagnon is suing Brian Hughes, his former friend, for the value of a motorcycle and emotional stress. David, state your case.
I met Brian through a friend of mine who recommended him as a handyman, and I went ahead and hired him for occasional jobs, yard work and painting, that sort of thing.
What do you do, David?
I'm a carpenter.
Okay.
You know, I get side work and that sort of thing, or things around my own house, and I'd use them to, you know, after hiring him for a few jobs, and it becomes apparent he's a bit of a heavy drinker. So even knowing that, I would use him. And after long periods of time, we had discussion that in order to help him get on his feet,
Yeah. Who's drinking?
I would allow him to live in my motorhome. And during this time, he does find a full-time job. That's
Okay.
great. But it turns out he starts to abuse the situation. He starts bringing in scrap stereos and things like that and playing them at all hours of the night. I started getting complaints from the neighbors, and enough was enough. So I decided, well, I got to kick him out. So I kick him out, and I had to actually move the motorhome to kick him out. And
You moved the house instead of him?
the motor house, yeah.
Is that true?
So many words, sure.
Okay.
I allowed him to use my motorcycle and to pick up some materials. And during that time, he never returned back to the job. And I later find out the bike was wrecked. And
You took his motorcycle and you wrecked it?
Dave gave me the keys to the motorcycle to go pick up some plumbing parts.
Yeah.
I rode the motorcycle, but I didn't go get some plumbing parts.
Where'd you go?
I went all around the Puget Sound area with my girlfriend. I put about 250 miles on the motorcycle, and Dave was going to
So
sell
he
me.
thinks you're going to get some materials for a job, and you just drive around the Puget Sound.
Darn right.
Darn right. And then what happened at the end?
August of 2005 was a smoking month, and I wasn't passing that one up.
Yeah, it sounds like you smoked in the end. What happened?
Actually, when you hear my side of the story, it's
Go ahead.
actually.
Let's hear
Let's
it.
hear it? Okay. I'm at a 7-Eleven next door to my house, and this guy with a hook for an arm says, "Hey, what are you doing for a couple of
Hook
months?"
for arms?
Yeah.
Was that him?
No. He had a prosthesis. So anyways,
Who are you
he
talking
says,
about?
"What are you doing for a couple of months?" I said, "What do you got in mind?" He said, "Well, I like to smoke some crack. Would you like to do it with me?" And I said, "You bet." So 10 minutes later, we're a mile and a half down the street from my house, and we are smoking crack. And in the morning, we're getting a delivery, and in the afternoon, we're getting a delivery because the man has got a job. Well, one of these days, I see the man, and it's Dave. And Dave looks at me, Larry doesn't really trust me at first, but as the months go by.
What's he got to do with the man with the prosthesis who's smoking crack?
Because the prosthesis crack smoker Dave is his connection.
Oh, he's a crack seller?
That's right.
Why do I have trouble
Well, he
believing
didn't sell
that?
crack. He sold lots of cocaine, but you can turn it into crack real fast. So,
Have both of you been in jail?
yes, I have been to jail, but not
How
for
about
anything. Not for any of that.
Yes?
it's been 20 years, Your Honor,
In jail?
since.
Oh, since you were in jail.
Yeah.
For drugs?
Yes, sir. Yes, Your Honor.
So we started to know each other and have a rapport and became friends. And after the drugs and all of that, we grew up and we stopped doing all that
Got out
crap.
of it. Good.
He had houses and renters that needed to be their property being taken care of.
Right.
And I was a hard-working son of a gun, and I would drink. I like to drink. I have metal in my back from a car accident when I was 17. However, I was the hardest working person he'd probably ever seen. I worked hard for Dave.
You worked hard for me.
And
You borrowed
when
his motorcycle. Cut to the quick.
Okay. He threw me the keys, and I took the motorcycle. And Dave and I had an agreement, he was dangling a carrot in front of my face. He would sell me the motorcycle for $800, maybe $1,000. Well, at the end of my ride, pretty close, I met up with a friend and he said he would buy the motorcycle for $2,200. So I let him test ride it. I stood to make a profit. Where could I lose? He brought it back and he'd crashed it.
A true entrepreneur.
That's right. He crashed the motorcycle. I said, well, this is not going to ruin my day. He
crashed it?
My friend crashed it, but it was only cosmetic, I thought. So when I'm getting ready to take off and leave this, wrap my day up and go back and get some plumbing parts, and the motorcycle's bucking me off. So, and it was, my girlfriend flies off the back, not the best day to wear a Daisy Dukes, I'll tell you that. And the motorcycle takes me down, breaks the holy garbage out of my leg. Road rash all over. So I'm in the hospital a few days later and Dave comes to see me and serve me. And he, being a businessman, I said, well, he's my friend. I broke his bike. I'll pay him.
All right, so you have an accident on his motorcycle.
Yes, I did.
Your 250-mile trip around the Puget Sound on a good day. Did you have a few beers along the way?
I did not, even though the paperwork, the police report says that. I hadn't drank since March of St. Patrick's Day. My girlfriend had 2 Yukon Jack Little shots. The sheriff said, I smell alcohol, and found those 2 little empty bottles. But when I ended up at the hospital, they did a full blood panel on me, and there was nothing. No substance, no alcohol, no anything. I hadn't had a drop for 6 months.
Were you charged with anything?
Yes, I was.
What?
I was charged with DWI because I told the sheriff to get out of the critical room after he'd spent time distracting the staff that was trying to help my girlfriend. And after a while, I said, go get the blood test machine and do this test. Go ahead. I'll submit. I'll submit. Well, he didn't, and he wouldn't, and he kept standing around and just walking around with his thumbs in his rear. And I said, all right, you need to leave. And he did leave. Well, a year later, I'm driving up the hill to my house, and I get pulled over, and I have a DWI for refusing a test. I did not refuse a test.
You really expect me to believe that?
Yes, I do.
How much
Yes,
you
I
suing
do.
him for?
$3,000, Your Honor.
This accident was in 2000 and what?
5.
What took you so long to sue?
We made an out-of-court settlement at one point. He did make one payment to me, and I waited 2 years hoping that he would continue.
What do you mean by an out-of-court settlement?
Instead of going into court...
Did you get it in writing?
Yes, I do, Your Honor.
Ah. Brian, did you sign it?
I may have. I might have been drunk.
What a shock. The plaintiff is suing the defendant for the value of a motorcycle. There's no question that the defendant took the motorcycle and went for a spin, so to speak. He had a serious accident and he was arrested at the scene of the accident for DWI. The defendant is trying to make light of the fact that he has an alcohol problem, and we had a few laughs while we were here, but at the end of the day, what I have is a defendant who, as far as I'm concerned, is a danger to the community, who doesn't understand responsibility, who doesn't understand the seriousness of drinking and driving. Now, this case occurred in 2005, and you are beyond the statute of limitations. You can't be a nice guy and expect someone to pay you back and then years later go back to court and think you're going to win, because you can't. You are barred by the statute of limitations from suing him. However, I'm so turned off by this defendant, his lack of respect for the court, his lack of respect for you, for the woman who was on the other end of the motorcycle, that I'm going to fine for you in the amount of $2,000. So ordered.